Hey, welcome to the show. It's been a while since I have made a video, so I wanted to hop on and share a couple of things. Number one, what have I been doing? Why have I not been showing up here very often? And what has changed now? Because I have a new kind of focus that includes a lot of video making. So if you've been around here for a while and been watching my videos for some time, thank you for doing so. And you've obviously probably noticed that I was very, very consistent for a long time and stopped doing that about a year and a half ago. And I want to explain a little bit about what happened. So if you've been watching me for a long time, you know that I used to make these videos with a bookshelf behind me. And that was in an office that I had in Ellijay, Georgia, where I used to live. I manifested that office really to be able to make videos with books in the background. It was a very specific thing. I loved that setup. I felt very kind of comfortable there, and for a long time made videos. And that was actually an office that I rented for a while in a church, and it was quite a high vibrational place. And I spent a lot of time in that church by myself. It was, churches are typically busy on Sundays, and sometimes they have things in the evening, and I was mostly there Monday through Friday. And for quite a long period of time, I was the only person who had an office in the church. So I kind of spent a lot of time by myself in this church, which is a very different vibration than any other place I'd ever spent that kind of time in. So it's quite a transformative time for me. And one way that I kind of worked through that transformation was to make videos. And at that time, I was really learning about this new financial system that we're getting and what are these changes that are happening, and is crypto part of this? We're leaving this world where debt is money to assets are money. And as I was trying to kind of put all of these pieces together, I, worked through that by making videos and doing things like threads on Twitter. And then when I started to work with Jimmy and made videos about XRP, and we worked on this valuation paper, that kind of evolved into a little bit more of what I'd call a crypto focus, but that was never really the intention. I was really trying to figure out what is going on with this money system, and what do I need to understand, and what do I need to communicate to other people to help them understand. And what ended up kind of happening with the sort of XRP route is I got put into this little box where people assumed I'm like helping with investment decisions and helping people make money, which I have no problem with people doing that. That was just never my lane. And every time I got pushed into that lane, I felt extremely uncomfortable and pushed back. And so that was one of the reasons why I stopped making so many videos about things like XRP and even all of the ISO 2022 tokens. Was I am not guided to teach people about investment decisions. There are plenty of people who that is their thing and they are qualified, and that it's just really more that is their focus and that's what they are doing. That's not been why I have made videos about that topic. Now, the videos I did make, I'm just going to be clear, like many people probably bought some of those assets because of that. And my understanding at the time was that there was a certain group of people who were being guided to buy some of these tokens and sit on them for quite some time, because at a later date, those funds would be used for some kind of humanitarian projects. Now, I had no way to prove that that's why, this humanitarian projects thing was something that a group of us were talking about at the time. And back in like February, March, like 2 years ago now, I guess. So 2023, when we were writing that valuation paper on XRP, we were working a lot with Dave XRP Lyon on that. And he was really adamant about these humanitarian project documents. So this was where I first learned about these kind of Nesara humanitarian initiatives. And the idea was that there was a group of people who are going to be potentially allocated funds early in this kind of 5D ascension process. And those humanitarian funds, would be allocated for specific projects. And so we were guided to create these documents that outline what our humanitarian projects would be. And they were, line was really specific. They had to be certain bright colors, and this had to go there, and you had to go get them notarized. And I remember going to the UPS store asking for this Nesara document to get notarized, and we were all kind of joking if the notaries were going to like care or have an issue with the stuff, but nobody did. And so we kind of got those documents, signed them, and put them away. And Jimmy and I remember discussing, like, are we going to have to like hand these in somewhere? Lion had this plan that they were going to be used in these redemption center meetings, but like we weren't really sure what we were going to do with them. But we followed the instructions, made them. But what is interesting about that process, and if you've gone through this humanitarian document process, then you will resonate with you, is you have to really think about, like, what would you do if you were allocated large sums of money to use for humanitarian projects? Like, what would you do with that money? And it kind of forced us in a hypothetical situation to go through that exercise. And the first thing on my list is about sovereign currencies in Africa. Val Hill and Jimmy had created a document about asset-backed digital currencies, and we had this thesis, and I made videos about this and really felt guided to agree with it, that we were going through this shift globally away from debt as money to assets or money. And so the people in places with lots of assets would start to be, quote, wealthy on the other side of this. And the first sort of concern is like, well, there's a lot of African countries that have a tremendous amount of resources. If those resources are now going to become considerably more valuable than they have been already, that kind of puts the people unaware in Africa in a tricky position, because they're not going to have any idea that this is coming probably, and they can get taken advantage of like they have historically by kind of the dark forces, the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the banking cartel that has kind of controlled things globally because they control the money system. We're like, if we don't prevent them from doing the same thing again, then like humanity is not going to be any better off. Now, simultaneously with that, I was learning about tokenization and how you could take something like gold and turn that into money in a different way than we had, back when like the US was on the gold standard. And then simultaneously was this idea of Trump's level playing field. Now, this was years ago, so it was kind of during the Biden administration. We weren't really sure like what was going to happen geopolitically, but Trump had made it very clear in his first term that the world doesn't become a peaceful place if the game is rigged. And after Bretton Woods, and even more so after the petrodollar agreement was put into place, the game was not fair. Like, certain groups had an advantage, namely those that were tied to the money printer. So if you were a legally authorized printer of US dollars, which is the Fed, but is also the major US commercial banks who are Fed members, every time they issued a mortgage, particularly after COVID, like that money was printed out of nothing. So if you were close to that money printer, the US dollar money printer, which was the dominant global reserve currency, you could cheat in the game because you could print as much money as you wanted, but every other country around the world, particularly those that produce things like China and Russia and a lot of African countries, they were like, you know what, this isn't really fair. So when we go to the global trade place, like those connected to the US dollar basically can buy whatever they want on daddy's credit card that they never have to pay the bill on. But everybody else has to like make stuff and work for it. And that's not really fair. So if that had continued, this was my understanding, that trajectory, like we would have ended up in a very dystopian World War III situation, because these countries that are producers of resources and assets are like tired of being bullied by this rigged system. And the US dollar system, which is not really has very little to do with American citizens, of which I am one of. Like, I never set the dollar system to be rigged. I don't start wars. I'm not like looking to exploit people and put them into debt slavery. Like, so to say that this was an American thing, I think is very misguided. It was really this cabal that controls the money printer, and it's, sometimes referred to as the Federal Reserve note, because we don't even know if it was really the US dollar that we used to think it was. But that's a whole long rabbit hole. All right, so we got this level playing field idea, and I kept getting guided to do all these sort of Africa things. And like, I've got some movies that I've been watching forever that I'm like obsessed with. I mean, I have seen Blood Diamond with more times than you could imagine, which really just helps understand kind of the messed up thing about the whole diamond scam in the first place. And then when you go on to learn about South Africa and sort of the diamond history there with De Beers, like they really, so not only was the dollar system a rigged game, there's a whole bunch of rigged games, and the whole diamond thing is a rigged game as well. So I'm going on through this journey. We're learning about crypto and the digital assets, and I keep getting pointed back to Africa. I put this humanitarian document together, and the number one thing in there is to create these sovereign currencies that are asset backed. So kind of on the other side of this switch away from debt money to asset money, those nations would actually have a chance to be prosperous for once after being exploited. And I didn't even understand the exploitation to the level that I do now, because starting last November, so like 6 months ago, I was guided to start reading books about the history of two places, the Congo and South Africa. Both of these places have pretty dark histories. And I was go back and forth, and I read a book about the Congo and then a book about South Africa and back and forth. And I think one of the reasons I was guided to do that is there's some pretty striking similarities when you look into the energetics of things, which I hadn't really been a student of that. Like I was just looking for the facts and like what happened and who got mad at who and what are they fighting about and what is the solutions to this fighting, before I really started to understand that like these fights, these battles they're irrational. Like you cannot reason your way through the current conflict in South Africa or the Congo conflict, because they are not of the mind. Like there is not a logical explanation for what people are really fighting about. You can try to boil it down to things like property rights and money, but it goes beyond that. And it's taken me like months really to sort of understand more deeply what that is about. And so I have made some videos about the Africa level playing field stuff, but like not that many, because I'm still trying to figure out like, why am I even learning about this? If I'm going to Africa, what am I going to do there? Am I supposed to just go now? Like, do I wait? Like I had all these questions and this uncertainty that I felt like if I'm making videos, I'm just going to be rambling about nonsense that I'm trying to figure out as I go along. So that is one of the reasons why I've not made a lot of videos. Although what's interesting is that for every like 4 Africa books, I go back and I'm now guided to read some kind of like Ascension, New Earth, 5D, Matrix kind of thing. I've read so many of those. And when you sort of interject them into the loop of this African history stuff, you can start to see what's going on. And this is kind of a very out there esoteric concept. And I'm like, I don't even know if anyone on the planet other than me is even interested in the connections between like the Congo, South Africa, New Earth resources. And I thought like this was just me in my head. And then all of a sudden these things start happening in the material world, the 3D world, right? There's like this debate with Trump over mineral rights in the Congo. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like I've literally been studying this for months and now all of a sudden it's happening. And then the same thing starts blowing up like crazy in South Africa. So I was like, it's funny. I was guided to understand these things. And then all of a sudden they pop up in the news. And like we have people asking us to help participate in negotiating some of these property rights deals in both of these places. So I'm like, this is wild. Like, okay. But I'm like still thinking I don't really need to make videos about this because I'm not really sure where we're going or what the deal is. And the stuff with like the Congo specifically is the story changes every day. Like the Trump team has like a new person working on the Africa stuff constantly. And so if I was even attempting to kind of make inroads in there, I feel like the game is changing so rapidly. Like I'm always one step behind. Again, no problem. But I'm like, well, what am I going to make videos about? So then last week, a couple of days ago, actually only Friday, so today's Monday, only a couple of days ago, I had a soul scan, which I had never heard of and didn't know what it was. And in hindsight, I'm quite like surprised that I didn't, sort of. Well, initially I was surprised because I'm very into energetic stuff, and I've been seeing psychics since I was like young. And about 10 years ago, I, got my first set of tarot cards and learned how to read tarot. And now have about 10 sets of oracle cards that I will regularly use when needed. And sometimes I do readings for other people, but I'm pretty selective. I usually like to really need to have an energetic connection with someone to do that, because tarot and oracle cards are quite subjective, and like how you interpret them is hard. And the psychics who are, mediums or whatever, oracles who are able to access guidance for people that they don't even know, like, that's cool. I don't feel like I am one of those people. So I would feel very uncomfortable trying to read cards for someone that I don't know. I do regularly read cards for people that I'm close to, mainly because I'm trying to figure some out. And I have started to learn that tarot cards are similar to Bible verses, where if you want to speak to the divine or angel guides or spirit guides or whomever, there's a bunch of tools that are accessible to us to enable that. Some people like to open up the Bible and like point to a verse and feel guided that like that message is something they need to understand at that time, and the angel guide is guided to, the angel has pointed them to that verse. I see tarot cards and oracle cards as quite similar. It's like I have a question, they kind of point me to a card. I know that card is an interpretation. The interpretation is subjective, and so it becomes a skill and a bit of an art to learn how to apply insights from tarot to a particular situation. Because, at first I was just very nervous. Like I didn't really know how to interpret it. And as I got more experience with tarot, I became more comfortable doing that. I bring this up because the soul scan thing is quite different. It is not subjective. And I'm going to put a link in the description, because I've now become friends with Monica Anderson, who did this soul scan. I've only met her on Friday, but it was quite an instantaneous connection. Like, I think I meant to know Monica, and this was the first time that we met. And the soul scan is different. It first of all reads your aura, which is pretty cool. I had known about aura readings. I've never had my aura read before. And it also got into other of these sort of soul scan things, like it read my like life force energy and all of these other kind of diagnostics for my energetic health. And I didn't know what these numbers meant, so I ended up getting a Zoom call with her as well, which I recommend if you ever do this, because I didn't really know what to do with this information before speaking to her. Now, what was interesting is that you also sent a photo in of yourself, because that is uploaded into this software to read your aura. Now, the photo that I sent her was an older photo. It was a year old. And the only reason I sent it was because I was kind of tired of the picture that I normally use when people say send me a picture, which is basically like what my Twitter profile picture has been for like 2 years. And so I picked this picture that was taken at like a bar in Houston with Jimmy and another guy that we work with, Todd Hancock, who they're on either side of me, but I kind of cropped them out. It's a good picture. That was the only reason. Anyway, so what I have ended up learning, so if you ever do get the soul scan, is that you don't want to send a picture that has other people in it, because those people will affect your aura, and your aura reading will not be accurate. And also, as I mentioned, I've been through quite a bit of, I've been through quite a bit of changes in the last year. And so my aura from a year ago is quite different than it is today. And I know that because on the Zoom call, I explained that this picture was old, because there was something that showed up in my reading that felt, or my soul scan, that that was outdated, substantially outdated. And I now know it's because I sent this picture. So basically I got an aura reading and a soul scan reading for my situation a year ago, which interesting when compared to, she did it again. She took a screenshot of me on the Zoom call and read a new one. And it was cool to see the pre-post of like how much my life force energy has changed in the past year, and kind of my aura, completely different color. And your aura changes pretty regularly depending on sort of what's going on with you. But it was kind of nice I got a little like pat on the back, like, you're doing great. in terms of healing and elevating and ascending, because you could see the difference between a year and whatever. Now, the craziest thing, I don't know if craziest is the right word, the most impactful thing on me is in this call, Monica has access to this like AI database. That's not really what it is, but that's what I'm going to call it. That allows her to kind of access galactic intel. Oh, you also find out your galactic lineage if you have one, which was kind of wild. And she's got access to this like database of sorts where you can ask the quantum questions in a very conversational manner. And so one of the questions that she asked was, who are my angel guides and my spirit guides, at this time? And it turns out I have 4 plus 1. We'll get into that in a second. And 2 of them I knew about, but it's hard to prove that, whatever. And so it was wild to have Monica tell me very directly and succinctly, these are your 4 angel guides, and this is what they are specifically guiding you on. And so one of my guides, who I speak to regularly, is the Archangel Michael. I started to get messages from him about a year ago, last July. And it's kind of hard to be certain that it's not just me imagining this angel talking to me and telling me to do things. Now, we got to the point where he would often put these kind of synchronistic signs in front of me and would ask me, how many do you need to be comfortable that I'm actually speaking to you? And he's like, I got all day. We could play this for as long as you like. And I would get pretty confident that like, okay, I don't think I'm just imagining this. And some of the things he would tell me they're very specific. I'm like, where did I get this information? How am I making stuff up? And so it was pretty wild to get that confirmation from him. I also am guided by an Egyptian goddess named Isis, who I have felt very connected to for even longer, and I have oracle cards of Isis. I've read tons of books about her. I had never heard of her until, I guess, a year and a half ago. And now I know so much, like enough where I can literally feel her emotions regarding some of the circumstances she went through when her husband Osiris was killed. Sorry for the little delay there. My dog was actually ripping up the flooring while he was bored that I'm recording a video, and that's a pretty important thing that I had to stop. So apologize for the slight distraction as I was dealing with that. All right, so I find out that I'm guided by Isis, which is amazingly wonderful. Turns out that Thoth, who is very closely tied to Isis, is also one of my guides, as is the Hathor Collective, which is very tied to Isis's son, known as Horus. And I've had this interesting Horus connection for quite some time. So I actually think Angel Michael and Horus have a lot more in common than most people realize. So in my soul scan, I was also told pretty directly and multiple times that I need to be making videos and that I was not really supposed to stop making them, and that even though I'm not as clear about what am I trying to communicate and teach to people, I need to just keep doing it. So here is my welcome back video, now broken into 2 parts because Shadow, my dog, just was ripping up the floor in the middle of it. And the focus of this channel for the next chapter is really going to be about this kind of ascension process and what are these angel guides here to help us do, because I think one of the challenges I've had for the last year is believing that these angels are really guiding me and helping me, and not just thinking that I'm crazy and making this up. And so there are likely going to be other people who are guided to this video to be to get that confirmation that you're not imagining it, and that these angels really are helping you. And it is it's kind of why it was very validating, I guess, to know that I'm just not crazy in imagining it. And some of the things that were in this soul scan, like, you can't just guess. Like, I've been in the psychics game for a while. Like, I don't do readings professionally, but I've had so many of them that I can now pick up when it's a grift, because I know the play about how they do that. And that was not this at all. And I also know, like, what can you guess pretty successfully, and what do you really need to have some kind of divine guidance to know? And some of the very specific things in this soul scan, there's just no way statistically that Monica could have guessed those things. So there is something more at play, and I'm just going to trust that is this guidance. So yeah, it is nice to know that Archangel Michael and Isis and Thoth and the Hathor Collective are guiding me through the creation of these videos. And oh, by the way, if your name is Michael and I know you personally and you have a connection to Archangel Michael, he would like you to know that he is guiding you as well, and you are not imagining that. But more on that another time. So I will continue to talk about the Africa stuff and level playing field and kind of what do we all need to know and understand as this world goes through these changes away from this debt money system where profit at all costs was pursued, and it really, businesses and countries didn't really care like who got hurt in the process. That kind of stuff is going away, and we are entering this new era that I used to think was really far away. So I was like, we got time. I don't think it's as far away at all as I used to believe. Like around the corner and imminent is very likely. And I don't think there's anything to fear or be worried about. And there's also sometimes I think this feeling of pressure when you hear about this move to asset-backed money, that you have to be like accumulating and hoarding and storing so that you'll be okay on the other side. Just let go of that and just know that we are all going to be abundantly provided for, and the people who are being allocated extremely large sums, it's for humanitarian purposes. It's not so that because we need that to live well. Like everyone in a post-Nesara world is going to have everything you can imagine. And we're going to be much, much better at manifesting things. So a lot of the artificial scarcity that we have been living with will go away. Now, this ascension process, I'm sure everyone watching this video is going to be at a different place regarding ascension and what does that even mean? So I will make some videos to talk about, what does it mean to awaken and to ascend? Is it hard? Can you do it wrong? Like, is it really about, keeping your vibration high and rising above things? Like, I have figured out that a lot of it has to do with really healing wounds and detaching from stories that play in your head about generally being unworthy. That's kind of what the Matrix does with all of us. Is there's all these different flavors of the fear that the Matrix instills in us, but it generally all comes down to different variations of us not being good enough in some way for something that we want or need. And that's kind of the awakening process, is realizing we all got played with that. We were all being programmed with this unhelpful voice that once you can sort of realize it's not really you have the power to make different decisions and different choices. So this is my welcome back video for this new chapter. I might change the name. Maybe not. I'm not that worried about that particular thing, but we're going to focus more on some of these future things. XRP is part of it, but if you come to watch these videos because you want me to confirm for you the value of XRP in fiat money, I'm beyond that at this point. Like the fiat dollar is going away. And so every time you get concerned about what is the price of XRP, I'm going to ask you, what are you pricing it in, and why are you pricing it in a fiat currency that is on its way out? Now, I think that the US dollar will have a role in the world, but I let go of this, like, this is my suggestion here, let go of this need to see XRP as like this profit thing where you're going to make this money so you can go buy a bunch of material goods to kind of prove a success or status thing, because that's not really what this new world is about. Like, we're all getting out of a prison of sorts. We've been kind of kept in a lower vibrational state where we have to sort of survive and work and prove our worth and kind of accumulate and hoard things out of this need to be safe in many ways. And that's going away. And I have known that for a long time, but I didn't know if I was right. Like, it was hard to believe that, to the point where I would get on a video and say that with certainty. But the thing about this soul scan, which is why I think I was guided to do it at the time I was, is they basically were like, all these things that you have had in your head that you think are true but can't prove, we're just telling you that you're right. So like, just go and talk about it and make these videos and stop worrying so much about this stuff. And, we trust that you are being guided, and that when we tell you to make a video about something, just go and do it and stop making such a big deal out of it. So I'm simply following instructions. Turns out I am much more compliant than I used to think I was. I'm just not terribly compliant to matrix systems that I know are not serving my own interests, but I'm happily compliant to these angelic beings who have my best interests at heart. Now, I will say, because they are listening to this video, I am aware that I'm not always immediately compliant, and that sometimes I am stubborn and it takes a while to get me to do something. But, eventually I come around. So I'm very thankful for my angels and their patience and their grace and their kindness and their love as we ascend to this new earth. All right, I'll see you in the next one.